Welcome to a class on reading comprehension. In this class, we are going to talk about the following. First of all, we'll talk about the methods to solve a reading comprehension. There are two broad methods which are used to solve an RC. Secondly, we'll talk about the steps which are used when you confront an RC and when you try to solve it. Post that, we'll talk about the normal problems which are faced by students when they try to practice and solve reading comprehensions. Then we'll talk about these three major kinds of questions which are asked in an RC. These are vocabulary based questions, reference based questions, and inference based questions. We'll also talk about how to solve these questions through an example so that you understand the method used to solve these kind of questions. There are two methods which are used to solve reading comprehension. The first method is that you go on to read the comprehension first and then you move to the answer choices. On the other hand, the second method is that you read the questions first, you do not read the answer choices, you just understand the areas which are asked in the reading comprehension through the questions, and then you move on to the comprehension. In the second method, while you're reading the comprehension, you try to answer the questions which you have just read. So this is an approach which goes upside down by reading the questions first, going on to the comprehension, and covering the specific areas which have been asked in the examination. Whereas in the first method, you follow a straight approach by reading the comprehension and then moving towards the answers. The problem with second approach is that when you read the comprehension, you're trying to figure out the questions, the answers to the questions that you have just read. And in that hurry of trying to figure out the answers, you might not understand the central theme of the comprehension, or you might misunderstand what is being asked, what is being mentioned in the comprehension. Therefore, this approach is considered to be a little risky. What we are going to do in this lecture is understand how to use these two methods together to answer our questions. Traditionally, we have been learning how to do them separately, but we are going to do them together in order to maximize our results in the examination. This approach in solving a reading comprehension, there are three steps which are to be followed to solve an RC. The first step is to go through the vocabulary questions first. Now in RBI grade B examination, on an average 10 questions from RC are asked every year. This contains 2 RCs. In these 2 RCs, on an average 20 to 30% of the questions belong to vocabulary section, which means that out of 10, 2 to 3 questions belong to the vocabulary section. Now our first target is to cover these 2 to 3 questions. How do we do it? Instead of reading the comprehension first, we directly go to the vocabulary section, or we directly identify these 2 to 3 questions in the RC and we try to solve them. In an RC, a vocabulary section has only two kinds of questions. Either they ask you synonym or they ask you antonym of the word mentioned in the question. We'll be covering the vocabulary questions in a short while. The second step is to identify the specific issue-based questions and then to solve them. On an average, these questions also contain 20 to 40% or 2 to 4 questions. So the objective is to identify these 20 to 40% of the questions and to solve them after you are done with the vocabulary questions in the RC. We will be covering all these three steps one by one. The last step is to identify the inference based questions and to go through these questions. The important thing about these three steps is that in step 1 and step 2, you do not need to read the entire comprehension. It is only these inference based questions in step 3 where you have to read and comprehend the comprehension, right? So in order to solve these 2 to 3 questions, you need to go through the RC and understand what is being asked in the examination. These are considered the most typical questions out of these 3. Moving on, the problems faced by students. The most normal or the most widespread problem which is being faced by students is how to tackle vocabulary. There are many solutions as to how to improve your vocabulary. The first method to improve your vocabularies is simple: understanding the meanings of words which you read every day in your newspaper. So instead of reading specific books, you use the newspaper which you have to read every day to improve your vocabulary. The second step is to use a dictionary and understand meanings of 5 to 10 words every day. Now, this is a very hectic exercise which requires understanding and mugging up 5 to 10 words every day and also revising them every second day. This means that if you have done 5 words today and 5 words tomorrow, tomorrow you revise these 5 words first and then read new 5 words. On the third day, you revise these 10 words first and go to the next 5 words. On the fourth day, you revise these 15 words first and then go on to the next 5 words. This is how you improve your vocabulary, by revising everything that you read or every word that you read every other day. This is the first most common problem which is being faced by students. The second problem which normally students face is getting stuck between two answer choices. Now, this is normally faced in all the 3 steps that we discussed before. In step 1, 2 and 3, in all the 3 steps, you might face this problem of getting stuck between two answer choices. In vocabulary, the only way to get out of this problem is to improve your vocabulary. We'll be talking about how to improve or how to get out of this problem in step 2 and step 3 in the next slide. In vocabulary, 2 kinds of questions are asked. They ask you synonyms or they ask you antonyms. Now, the questions can be framed in other ways as well, by asking words which have meaning which is similar to the word which is being asked, or asking for a word which has a meaning which is opposite to the word which is being mentioned. So, the meaning is the same, they ask you for synonyms or antonyms. There are 2 methods which can be used to solve vocabulary questions. The first is when your vocabulary is good. So, if you know the meaning of a certain question, you pick the right choice and you move ahead. This is followed when you are very sure about the meaning. But the second method is most popularly used in examinations, consciously or subconsciously. In the second method, you identify the sentence where the word is mentioned in the comprehension. Let's assume that this is the sentence and this is where the word is mentioned. So you plug the different answer choices that are being given to you in place of this word, and then you read the sentence and try to play by reading the sentence and comprehending as to which word fits in the best in place of this word. So this is the most popular method which is being used. You can practice this method by identifying the tone of the sentence. If the sentence has a positive tone, all the words after being replaced should not change the tone of the sentence. We'll be talking about these methods shortly. Ways to improve your vocabulary, I've already talked about this. You comprehend the meaning of various words that you go through in the newspaper every day, or you cover 5 to 10 words every day and revise them on a daily basis. Let's talk about a question, an example. The passage will be discussed or will be mentioned after certain slides. The reason that I have not given the passage before is because I want to show you how to go through certain questions without going through the passage at all. So in this question, the question is, which of the following word is opposite to the word proactive? Now it's just given, we just know that we have a word called proactive and we want to find out a word which is opposite in meaning to this word. If you know the meaning of proactive, only then can you go forward with this approach. Otherwise, you will have to follow the approach of plug and play. To follow the approach of plug and play, you will have to find out the specific sentence which mentions the word proactive in the comprehension. Let's assume that we know the meaning of the word proactive. So we know that far-sighted is Durdarshita, which is the same as proactive. Visionary belongs to the word vision, which is something related to the future, which also coincides with the word proactive. Forward is similarly similar to the word proactive because it is also talking about the future or the future course of action. Now we have two words, prescient and myopic. We do not probably, most of the students do not probably know the meaning or direct meaning of these two words, so they will be stuck between these two answer choices. So now we go to the plug and play approach and understand what the sentence means. MG Narega is not only a pioneering livelihood security program but also a great example of proactive disclosure of information through its MIS. So we see that the sentence has a positive tone. Okay, so proactive here means something very positive, whereas myopic, if you understand, there is a disease called myopia. So myopic refers to something which is a little negative. To using this method, you can understand that it probably has a more close meaning to myopic when it comes to finding the opposite word. If we know the meaning of prescient, it directly means proactiveness or thinking about something which is in the future, whereas myopic means the exact opposite of proactive. By using the positive and negative tone argument, we could find out that myopic certainly means something related to a disease or something related to short-sightedness. So using those, we could answer this question. That is how you use the plug and play approach to answer the questions, by finding out the tone of the sentence as well. Coming to the reference based questions, let's go through the question once without going through the passage at all. Which of the following statements is true with respect to the given passage? MG Narega is a livelihood security program. We are talking about MG Narega here. There has been a digitization of all the processes in MG Narega. Individual worker details from about 2.5 panchayats are available in the MG Narega MIS. RDI Act enables any citizen to monitor the implementation of the program, and all of the above. Now what you see here is that in all the four choices we are talking positively about MG Narega. It is a livelihood security program. Yes, it is. We just have to confirm it by going through the passage once. There has been a digitization of all the processes in MG Narega. It has been done. We just have to ensure that this has been mentioned in the passage. Individual worker details from around 2.5 lakh gram panchayats are available. We have to find out if this fact is true to ensure that this answer choice also belongs. RDI Act enables any citizen to monitor the implementation of the program. This, as a standalone statement, is also correct. So there is high possibility that the answer choice is 5. To ensure that what we are thinking is correct, we just have to see that all these four choices are somewhere mentioned in the passage. There might be statements wherein you find statements which are opposite to one another in such reference based questions. So there you know that you have to go to that specific part of the passage and then understand which statement belongs and which statement does not belong to that specific passage. This is how you can save your time, by understanding the tones of different sentences that are being mentioned in the question as well as in the passage. Coming to another reference based question, the question is, what does the author mean by citing the phrase code is law in the passage? So the first step that we take is find out the sentence which mentions code is law. Let's go through the statements first. A computer code can be used to formulate a law. Digitization of all the laws in form of a computer code. So these two statements are talking about digitization through computer code. It is specifically talking about only computer code. The third statement is a computer code and a law of land can be used for social control. This has three keywords: computer code, law of the land, and social control. So we have to see in the specific sentence whether these three words are available or not. It is a book written by Lawrence Lessig. It's a fact, so we have to refer to the specific sentence and check. And the fifth is none of the above. Let's go through the specific sentence. In this regard, it is instructive to recall the phrase code is law, popularized by Harvard professor Lawrence Lessig. So it's popularized by Lawrence Lessig, but it is not mentioned here whether it's a book written by Lawrence Lessig or not. So we delete this answer choice. Code as in software and code as in law. So we have code as in software as well as code as in law. So this takes us very close to the third choice, which mentions computer code as well as law of land. Can both be instruments of social control? Again, we have the keyword social control mentioned here as well as here, and they mean the same thing. To quote him, we can build or architect or code cyberspace to protect values that we believe are fundamental, or we can build an architect or code cyberspace to allow those values to disappear. There is no middle ground. Code is never found, it is only ever made, and only ever made by us. So what the passage is trying to say is coming very close to the third choice. The first and second choice are only talking about the computer code, therefore they can be rejected because the passage is talking about the law of the land as well as the codes that are being made to strengthen the law of the land. This is how you eliminate different answer choices and arrive at your answer. Let's move on to the passage now. This is the first paragraph of the passage. We will not be reading the entire passage. This is the second paragraph of the passage. After reading the first paragraph, you will see that the first passage talks about MG Narega as well as Management Information System or digitization, whereas the second paragraph of the passage talks about the problem of digitization versus accountability. So the first paragraph is positive in its tone, whereas the second paragraph is critical in its tone. Let's come to the inference based questions. What is the central theme of the passage? In order to answer this question, you need to read the entire paragraph and understand the meaning of the paragraph. It gives an introduction about MG Narega. It talks about evolution of social development schemes. It talks about digitization of government schemes. It appreciates computerization, however, also shares concerns of accountability. It talks about illegality in the system. As I said, the first paragraph talks about MG Narega as well as digitization, whereas the second paragraph, which is a bigger and more critical, talks about the fourth point, which is appreciation of computerization, whereas at the same time discussing the concerns of accountability. So the fourth choice is the closest because it covers the first paragraph as well as the gist of second paragraph. These questions can be answered by elimination by seeing as to which choice covers the entire theme of the paragraph, whereas which choice covers only a part of the central theme of the paragraph. Let's come to the last inference based question. The last question is, what is the tone of the author in the passage? In the study material that I have provided, there is a file on different tones which are normally asked in passages. You can go through that file to understand the meanings of different tones. In this passage, if you read the entire passage, you will see that the first paragraph is appreciative of MG Narega, whereas the second paragraph is critical of digitization. So, the first choice of critical and the second choice of appreciative also aligns with what is being mentioned in the passage. Third choice is neutral, which does not fall in line or does not comply. Need more of content to find out? This is the fifth choice. We don't need it. The fourth choice says appreciative, then critical. This becomes the closest to the tone of the author in the passage because, as we see, the first paragraph is appreciative, but the second paragraph is critical about MG Narega and about digitization. This is how you go through the different parts of a passage and try to solve them. In order to practice more questions like these, you can go through the study material provided by me.